Ever wonder why we carve pumpkins on Halloween? Or why bunnies bring eggs on Easter? You might think you know the stories behind your favorite holidays, but the truth is way stranger, darker, and more fascinating than you could ever imagine. Get ready, because today we're peeling back the layers of time to uncover the insane origins of 5 popular holidays. What you're about to hear will change the way you see these celebrations forever. Let's kick things off with the spookiest night of the year. Halloween. Long before trick-or-treating and superhero costumes, there was an ancient Celtic festival called pronounced Samhain. This festival marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, a time often associated with death. The Celts believed that on the night before their new year, October 31st, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. They thought ghosts of the dead returned to Earth, causing trouble and damaging crops. To ward off these spirits, people would light bonfires and wear costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, to disguise themselves from the otherworldly visitors, so that jack-o'-lantern on your porch. It's a descendant of a ritual meant to scare away actual ghosts. And your costume? It's the modern version of an ancient disguise to fool spirits. Over time, as Christianity spread, the church tried to replace Samhain with All Saints' Day on November 1st, and the evening before became known as All Hallows' Eve, which eventually morphed into Halloween, the appealing tradition of bobbing for apples. It might have its roots in a Roman festival honoring Pomona, the goddess of fruit and trees, which was incorporated into the Samhain celebrations. From pagan rituals to a billion-dollar candy industry, Halloween's journey is truly wild. Next up, the season of giving, Christmas. While we associate it with Santa Claus, twinkling lights, and gift-giving, its origins are a fascinating blend of different traditions. First off, no one knows the exact date Jesus was born. The Bible doesn't mention it. So why December 20? Well, many scholars believe the church chose this date to co-opt popular pagan winter solstice festivals. The most famous of these was the Roman festival of Saturnalia, a wild week-long party in late December honoring the god Saturn. During Saturnalia, everything was turned upside down. Businesses and schools closed. Social norms were relaxed, and people feasted and exchanged gifts. Sound familiar? Another influential celebration was the birthday of the unconquered sun god. Mithra also celebrated on December 25th. By placing Christmas on this date, the church made it easier for pagans to convert to Christianity without giving up their beloved winter festivities. And what about the Christmas tree? That tradition likely comes from 16th century Germany, where devout Christians brought decorated trees into their homes. Some say Martin Luther was the first to add lighted candles to a tree, inspired by the sight of stars twinkling through evergreens. So, the next time you're decorating your tree, remember you're participating in a tradition that blends Roman revelry, pagan sun worship, and German innovation. Now, let's talk about the Day of Love, Valentine's Day. If you think it's all about chocolates and roses, you're in for a shock. The origins of this holiday are shrouded in mystery and are actually quite dark. One of the most popular theories links it to a bizarre Roman festival called Lupercalia, celebrated in mid-February. This was a fertility festival dedicated to Faunus, the Roman god of agriculture. The rituals were, to put it mildly, intense. Priests would sacrifice a goat and a dog, then dip strips of the goat's hide in the sacrificial blood. They would then take to the streets, gently slapping women with these bloody hides. Far from being scared, Roman women welcomed this, as they believed it would make them more fertile in the coming year. It was a wild, chaotic matchmaking lottery. So how did we get from that to greeting cards? The Catholic Church, wanting to Christianize the pagan festival, may have declared February 14th as St. Valentine's Day. There were several saints named Valentine, and the legends are murky. One story tells of a priest named Valentine who defied Emperor Claudius II's decree that outlawed marriage for young men. Believing single men made better soldiers, Valentine secretly continued to perform marriages and was executed for it. Another legend says he sent the first Valentine greeting himself from prison to a young girl he had fallen in love with, signing it from your Valentine. It wasn't until the Middle Ages that the day became definitively associated with romantic love, largely thanks to poets like Chaucer. The holiday we celebrate today is a far cry from its bloody and chaotic origins. Let's hop over to Easter. Why do we celebrate with bunnies and eggs? These symbols have nothing to do with the Christian story of the resurrection. Instead, they're ancient symbols of fertility and new life, tied to pagan spring festivals. The very name Easter is believed by some to come from Yastar, an Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring and fertility, whose festival was celebrated during the spring equinox. Rabbits, known for their prolific breeding, were her symbolic animal, and eggs have been a symbol of new life and rebirth for thousands of years. Across many cultures, decorating eggs is an ancient practice. It's thought that as Christianity spread, it absorbed these popular pagan traditions to make the new faith more palatable. The egg, once a symbol of pagan rebirth, was cleverly reinterpreted to symbolize Jesus' emergence from the tomb. And the Easter Bunny, this character seems to have hopped over from Germany in the 1700s. German immigrants brought with them the story of the Osterhaze, or Easter Ari, a mythical creature who judged whether children were good or bad and delivered colored eggs to those who were well-behaved. So, when you're on an egg hunt, you're taking part in traditions that are thousands of years old, celebrating the return of spring and life itself. Finally, let's carve into the story of Thanksgiving. The picture we often have is of pilgrims and Native Americans sitting down together for a harmonious feast in 1621. While a harvest feast did happen, the story is far more complex, and not entirely the peaceful gathering we've been taught. For the Wampanoag people, who had been living on that land for over 12,000 years, the arrival of the English settlers was the beginning of a long and tragic period of disease, displacement, and conflict. The 1621 feast was more of a diplomatic meeting than a shared celebration of friendship. The Wampanoag, led by Massasoit, weren't even invited in the way we imagine. They showed up after hearing celebratory gunfire and, likely to ensure everything was okay and to assert their presence, arrived with 90% of their own men, contributing 5 deer to the meal. This brief moment of cooperation was sadly short-lived. Just a generation later, brutal conflicts like King Philip's War would devastate the relationship between the settlers and the native peoples. The idea of Thanksgiving as a national holiday didn't even take hold until the Civil War, when President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed it in 1863 as a day to unify a divided nation. So, while it's a wonderful time for gratitude and family, it's also important to remember the complicated and often painful history behind the holiday. And there you have it, the truly insane origins of 5 of our most beloved holidays. From pagan rituals and Roman fertility festivals to complex historical truths, the stories behind these days are so much richer and more surprising than we ever knew. Which holiday's origin stories shocked you the most? Let me know down in the comments. I love reading your thoughts. If you enjoy this journey back in time, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the fascinating corners of history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.